we're starting to see crazy things happen on our planet that we've never seen in human existence, with the natural disasters that are starting to occur on a more regular basis, on a more larger magnitude. You know, that to me, you know, completely layman's, think of me like, you know, just kind of your average day Joe, obviously walking around, thinking about life like that. And if I'm seeing that my planet's sick, I can only imagine what it's like to, you know, see what it's like now from that perspective, like you say, that orbital perspective outside of, you know, the society norms. One thing that I also really thought was pretty interesting about your take on things is that we are all one with the universe, that we all stand as notes that play to the universal song. You talk about that in your chapter 11, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. And you use the U2 song 1 as like kind of the main way to correlate that message.
Yeah. So to set the scene of that, you're right. It's in that chapter 11, and I am laying on my back inside a Soyuz spacecraft, getting ready to launch this.
That's the Russian spacecraft, if I'm...
Yeah, the Russian.
Okay,
yes,
perfect.
It's the Russian space. Yeah, and so I've got my knees on my chest. We're getting ready to launch to what will be a 6-month mission aboard the International Space Station. And if you back up a few hours, or a few pages in the book, the scene was me standing on the launch pad, and you know, here I am standing on a launch pad. And one of the things you need to think about is I spent the first 15 years of my adult life training to fight the Russians.
Okay.
So I was a Cold War fighter pilot stationed on the tip of the sword in the former West Germany, you know, protecting Western Europe from a Soviet attack. I fought in combat in a different part of the world. And so I lived in this very two-dimensional us versus them world, and I spent, you know, 15 years there. Fast forward, and here I am in a previous top secret Soviet military installation, about to launch to space on the 50th anniversary of the first launch of a human in space, Yuri Gagarin, from the same launch pad that he launched from, and I'm about to launch as a fully integrated member of a Russian spacecraft crew with a couple of Russian military officers, and I look up at the rocket and I see an American flag and a Russian flag side by side. And that image was burned into me because of the past. You know, it's the perfect example of, you know, beating swords into plowshares. It's a sign of what we can do when we recognize our true unity and we set aside our differences. And fast forward, now we're on the launch pad. It's been a few hours, and each of us was asked to pick a couple of songs that Russian launch personnel would pipe into the spacecraft to pass the time during the periods of relative boredom. And one was one of my songs that I picked. And I picked it because I knew at a very deep level that the mission that we were embarking on was a mission of unity for all of humanity. And I thought the song One, which is all about unity, was the perfect song for that. And so while I'm on the launch pad, I'm kind of dissecting what is physically happening. I don't want to give too much. I think you were talking about maybe playing.
Yeah, let's play. Let's play the video and show them. Basically, you did a great job narrating it. You've built us up perfect. I think we're gonna put us right where we want to be on that video. So let's jump in and check that out and see exactly, you know, what Ron's trying to describe here with One.
I don't know about you, but I can't hear the volume. Is the volume coming through?
It is coming through.
Okay.
Wow. Looking good, coming up. All right. Welcome back to our other office. Yeah.
Well, this was the beginning. Actually, we're going to switch back. I grabbed the wrong video for us there. That was my bad. I apologize. This was the interlude that we were looking at. You know what? We'll watch that one first, and we'll jump into what we were talking about. Typical Twitch stream stuff, guys. You know me. Scuffed a little bit. Sorry about that, Ron. This was the spacewalk that introduced you into peace and serenity. Did you have anything you wanted to touch on before we jumped into this video?
No, I mean, what this video is intended to be is to be basically a promo or a taste, a sizzle reel for the book Floating in Darkness, and these videos are coming off my my YouTube channel.
Perfect. Yep, which is Ron Garan, correct?
Yep.
Wow. good. Coming out. All right. Welcome back to our other office. Yeah. Okay, I see 3 tabs. Good. Okay, safer handles are good. Hey, let me get a local.
Pure white light streams out from behind Earth. I am engulfed in colorless, radiant light that seems to be emanating out of cold emptiness and traveling through cold nothingness. The light streams over and around me, and a hint of peaceful serenity awakens inside me. Beyond my view of the sparkling ISS, a rocky coastline on an unrecognized continent drifts into view. Sunlight bathing newly awakened snow-capped mountains into the glory of a new day. I imagine there are people down there somewhere, just starting their day, who are also witnesses to this exquisite beauty from a different but no less compelling perspective. I wish we could share notes. The complex immensity of the ISS against the backdrop of our indescribably beautiful Earth 240 miles below thrusts me into a singularity. The entire universe peels away the blanket of danger, the thoughts of upcoming tasks, the feelings of fatigue, the excitement of being in space are all displaced by a singular vision of beauty. The truth that is blatantly apparent from this vantage point is that every living thing on the planet and the planet itself are inexplicably interconnected and interdependent. What's obvious from this vantage point of physical detachment from Earth is that we are not from Earth. We are of Earth, all of us, every living creature.
Wow. So when you say that we are of Earth, we are not from Earth, what do you want to try to describe that a little bit more? Give us a little more perspective on what that would actually mean.
Yeah, and actually, it turns out that's going to be a really good segue into this other video that we were describing about being on the launch pad here. And there were one, because I talk about that, that realization that we're not from Earth, we're of Earth. But I take it one step further in this next video.
When I was reading that yesterday, sorry to jump in there. It's in my head right now. When I was reading that yesterday, that was one of the things that stood out the most to me. Like in my notes, I'm like sitting there just circling that part. Like, man, that was a really good message. Like it really just hit me in the head. And I saw someone in chat say, look at the difference in age that we have here. And, we're still trying to cooperate and figure out what we can do to help fix this world that we're all trying to survive in, instead of, running towards our peril, which it seems for some reason that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, so let me just touch on that for a minute, because when we started off this conversation, you asked me what I view the state of the world in, and I said it's terrible and it's on a really bad trajectory. However, it's within our power to change, to make that course correction, to make that change, to steer towards that visionary restorative future, that future that we would all want to be a part of. And that's why I do everything that I do since leaving NASA is to use the perspective of our planet as a catalyst towards making those unifying course corrections that we need to make. And I think the idea of that is if you boil down the whole book, I think it comes down to that one scene that we were talking about, not the scene we just showed, but the scene that we want to show, because that is the main tenet of the book. The main tenet of the book is to be an expose on our true unity. And just maybe just a little bit of background on the book. It's something that I've been writing since 1991. It's something that I wanted to write since I was in my early 20s as a novel, but it dawned on me that I had my own life experiences serve as really powerful literary tools. And so it's a fun book. It's all about dogfights and space flights and spacewalks and living on the bottom of the ocean. So it's an autobiographical narrative in that respect, but it's also an allegory, or it's primarily an allegory pointing towards the evolution of society, not only where we've been, but where we need to go, where we need to steer towards, what we're becoming. because we are at an inflection point right now. We are at a evolutionary phase shift that's happening right now, and this gives us a small peek into hopefully what's blossoming, what's coming about. And that's, it all, maybe just to digress for a second, it's all about evolution, right? And I think the first quantum leap of evolution was when humans, the species known as humans, or was given the ability to self-reflect, to realize that I'm an individual, that I'm separate from the natural world, that I can project my conscious thought forward or backwards billions of years. I could plan for the future. I could pass information on generation to generation through communications that we do. So that was the first giant leap of evolution. I think we're about to have the next giant leap. And many folks around the world have already made this giant leap. And that is to realize that the self you're self-reflecting on is not just an individual. It's part of a larger cosmic journey. And to some extent, when we realized that we were separate from the natural world and separate from each other, and that first giant leap was actually a de-evolution to some extent. Right. But it was a de-evolution that had its purpose. Its purpose has been served, or it has served its purpose. It's no longer a positive contribution. It's starting to become a very, very negative contribution to the future of humanity. And it's time for this next quantum leap in our evolutionary process, which is what this scene in the book about one is trying to hint at. It's probably in the middle of the book ish. So there's a lot that comes after that, but it's the first real hint in the book at where I'm trying to go with it.
Perfect. And I'm going to pull that up, and then we're going to come back around because I actually have a couple of questions on what we were actually just diving into on that discussion too, that I had in my notes. Okay. So let's play this video really quick here, and then we will jump back into some more discussion. You can actually find all of these videos on floatingindarkness.com as well, guys. I'm going to throw that link in the chat for you guys.
Now, lying here on my back with my knees in my chest, U2's song One begins to play in all three of our headsets. A few days ago, each of us picked a couple of songs that Russian launch personnel could pipe into the spacecraft to help us pass the time during periods of relative boredom. Would it be better to play it on YouTube? So
I was looking for it on there, and I wasn't finding it instantly. What is the name of this video on YouTube?
On YouTube, it is called A Glimpse into the Meaning of Life Moments Before Launch, and it has One Life as the thumbnail, in the thumbnail. Okay. It's the first video in the Floating in Darkness playlist.
Sorry, perfect, got it. Put that up over this way, guys. Thank you, Ron.
Yep. Now, lying here on my back with my knees in my chest, U2's song One begins to...
So one question, actually. This is another thing that stood out to me. When you said your knees were in your chest, was that like what they make you do before launch? Do you basically tuck in like that, or...?
No, that's how much room there is in the spacecraft. Okay, it's like three guys in the trunk of a car. Okay. And so yeah, there's no room for your legs to stretch out.
Wow.
So that's why it's three of us in the fetal position, really. Which is a metaphor that I'm going to use throughout the book as well.
Okay.
So to play in all three of our headsets. A few days ago, each of us picked a couple of songs that Russian launch personnel could pipe into the spacecraft to help us pass the time during periods of relative boredom. I chose One. At a very deep level, I knew that my Russian crewmates and I were about to embark on a mission of unity for all of humanity, and I felt that One was the perfect theme song for what we were about to do. As I think about the words straining forth from the melodic substrate, I experience a certainty of beauty. One love, one blood, one life. You've got to do what you should. I understand why the words are beautiful. They represent unity, a beautiful concept. but I don't understand why the underlying melody is also beautiful. I try to dissect what is physically happening. Each individual note is nothing more than a mathematical equation, a sine wave with a specific frequency that traveled on a radio carrier wave from the Launch Control Center to our spacecraft to the small speakers in our headsets. The speakers converted the electrical frequency to vibrational energy that traveled the short distance to my eardrums. Although my brain cannot make out each of these individual notes, when they are all taken together, my brain perceives the vibration they cause in my eardrums to be something beautiful. One life, with each other, sisters, brothers. Each of the notes lasts for only a short time, but all the notes together make up the song. Some of these notes, when taken by themselves, may not communicate beauty to me, but nonetheless, the overall beauty of the song would not be possible without these specific notes. This, being the second time I've strapped myself to tons of high explosives with the intention to light them, I'm yet again pondering my own mortality. Each of us, like the individual notes of a song, only exists for a brief time. Am I and all of us like the individual notes of the song of the universe? Our unique note lasts for the duration of our physical life, but the contribution of that note to the overall song lasts forever. Only you can be the specific note represented by your potential. No one can play your note but you. One life, but we're not the same. To think of our lives in this way makes it apparent that not only am I a distinct individual, I'm also the universe. The orbital perspective represents two sides of the same coin. And so keeping with that idea, when we dolly zoom out to the big picture perspective from space, while focusing on the worm's eye details on the ground, each of us is dolly zooming out to the scale of the entire universe. We do that without losing our individuality. When we choose to be kind to someone, or help someone or some creature, it's not that we're necessarily being altruistic any more than we're being altruistic to our hand when we pull it back from a hot stove. We get to carry each other. Carry each other. There's a distinction here that's becoming unmistakably clear as the countdown timer marches closer to the moment of truth. I think back to a thought I had during our third and final spacewalk of the STS-124 mission. I noted that what was clear to me from the perspective of the spacewalk is that we are not from Earth, we are of Earth. In that same vein, we are not in the universe, we are of the universe. Every moment of every life, from conception to death and beyond, mimics the all-encompassing life of the universe. And it is in death that we escape the gravitational pull of the mass of the universe and weightlessly step outside of our physical limitations, travel full circle, and return home. The universe is infinite, and as such, every point in it must also be infinite. I am two dolly zoom sides of the same coin. I am both a distinct finite individual and the infinite universe. It's not that I'm a universe and you're a universe. It's that we are the same universe. We are one, all of us, every living thing. One. One life. One.
Wow. Yeah, that one gets me. That one gets me. I really enjoyed the message that you're trying to convey there. It's something that I feel like, so I've obviously never been to space or anything like that, but it really resonates with me. Maybe it's because of my love of music, or maybe it's just the fact that I believe that we are at literally one. I mean, without working together, we're not getting anywhere. Everything that I've been able to gain through my success and everything has been unifying people, creating a community, and bringing one another together to accept each other, no matter what walk of life you come from, no matter who you are, and no matter where you're from.
Yeah, I'm picking up a copy of the book because I want to read the dedication. The dedication says, "To all those seeking the light of truth and who have the courage to peel back the layers of reality," right? And so that's in Floating in Darkness. And the whole purpose of the book is to be an expose on reality, basically. And I agree with you 100%. What dawned on me, so the writing in the book is an evolution as well, right? So the subtitle is A Journey of Evolution, right? It's
Right.
Floating in Darkness, A Journey of Evolution. And so not only is it allegory for the evolution of society, it's also the writing itself is an evolution. So the words I use, the language I use, the mindset I profess, the beliefs I profess, both spiritual and religious and scientific and everything else, evolves throughout the book.
Right.
So there's, for instance, just to give you an example, in the beginning of the book I use the word mankind, and at the end of the book I use the word humanity, because I have a greater understanding of what that means, and the word mankind has is less appropriate.
I had that in my notes. That's exactly what you see, that transition in the book. And would you say when you were using mankind, that was when you still felt you more had that primordial bond from like war and such?
Well, I mean, that's certainly part of it, and that's why there's combat stories in the book, and they're not they're combat stories where I don't pull any punches. It's not what you're going to see in Hollywood. It's not. Right. It's not. I mean, it's as far as to the maximum extent I was physically able to do it. It was an accurate accounting, both from a physical, spiritual, psychological, point of view of what it means to have people trying to kill you and you trying to kill them, and then in some cases succeeding. And so that the reason why all that combat stuff is in the book is to highlight tribalism, and not all tribalism is bad. Right. The willingness to sacrifice your life in some cases simply because you define somebody as a member of your community, whether that's your unit, your squadron, or your nation, is a very, very powerful tool. We just need to be able to expand our tribe to include all Earthlings. Right. and Earthlings aren't just humans either. It's all life on the planet. But there's a line in that video that we just said, is that when we're being kind to somebody or something, we're not being altruistic any more than we're being altruistic to our hand when we pull it back from a hot stove. It's one thing to kind of, give lip service to that. It's another thing to really understand it, to really understand what that means. Because, if there's a natural disaster and somewhere in the world, and as we all know, there's more and more of them all around the world. And if you're an altruistic person and you think, oh, those poor people over there, maybe I'll write a check that'll help or do something. The primary mistake is when we say, oh, those poor people over there. It's not those poor people over there. That's happening to us, right? And so this idea of unity is not just a philosophical, intangible, cerebral thing. It's the true reality of the world. It's the true reality of the universe. And the sooner we embrace that and understand it and live it, the better off we're all going to be. Right, and that makes a lot of sense. I mean, it seems for me like my entire life I've been raised in a very intense media format where we have been divided through fear or in the most recent years as an adult, I've seen them really pushing race as a way of division, our political parties as a way of division, and constant divide. I mean, we see it with our trade, we see it all over, and it's almost like we're trying to like retain knowledge in my mind, like for me to try to understand. I guess like maybe that's what we're worried about, is us losing the ability to be smarter than somebody else or be first somewhere, these things where if it was all of us being first together, maybe that really would bring, some source of connectivity that we've never had before. And I don't know what that, like you said, a target earlier when we were doing our intro, we don't really have that, right? What is our target as humanity versus individuals, right? Yeah, I think it all boils down to, and this is again another major tenet in the book, is what we use to motivate action. And to me, there's two very, very powerful ways to motivate action, to inspire action, right? One is fear, right? and fear divides. And the other one is awe and wonder. And so everything I've done since leaving NASA has been to try and instill the idea that we can build a future on the platform of awe and wonder, and
Right.
not a platform of fear. And that's why, we have to start with this visionary future, restorative future. That's the awe and wonder piece, right? That's the piece that inspires people. But what I've found is that although fear works really, really well in the short term, just have a bear chasing after you and you're going to run pretty fast, right?
Right.
Only awe and wonder works in the long term, right? Awe and
Mhm.
wonder opens up the mind to rational discussion. Awe and wonder leads to long-term cooperation and collaboration. And fear does exactly the opposite in all cases. It leads to closing of the mind, closing down of any rational thought, of cordoning off groups and people, of separating ourselves from other people. We can't cooperate with them because we have the fear that they're going to take advantage of us. And so, but because we are so short-term focused, everything is the next shareholder report, the next election cycle, we want things right now. And we're so focused on the short term, and fear is such a powerful short-term motivator of action. We're focused on fear right now, and we have a lot of commercial algorithms that are driving a fear-based economy, where they're feeding you exactly what your amygdala wants.
Right.
What your reptilian brain is craving, because that's what you're going to pay for.
Ticking as soon as you even said that. I was like, oh, fear of losing your job, fear of losing your home, fear of losing
fear of immigrants, fear of criminals, fear of Democrats, fear of Republicans, fear of
fear of people having their own opinion.
Yeah, there's obviously a lot of racial tension that's driven by fear, and the strategy of divide and conquer has been proven an effective strategy through centuries.
Right.
However, that's the old way of doing things. I truly believe that we're about to enter a new human epoch, right? A new human epoch where those type of things are being replaced with a new way of doing things. And there's a lot of biological precedents for this. In closed biological systems, there's an S curve of population growth, right?
Okay.
So the population stays really, really flat, and then the environment is in such a way that it takes off, right? And the population takes off, right? Then one of two things happen. Either it reaches an equilibrium and plateaus out, or it comes crashing right back down.
Right.
So we are right at the point, right at about the Industrial Revolution, which is also where the CO2 started being pumped in the atmosphere. We started this spike, this exponential growth in our population. And we're right at the point right now, the inflection point, where the acceleration is starting to slow down, right?
Okay.
And so if we keep with what got us to this point, which is, blind independence, companies that are solely focused on conquest and competition and resource exploitation and profit maximization at all costs. If we continue with that mindset, we're gonna have the crashing down part of it. But scientists have shown that a stable human population of about 10 billion can be contained within the Earth's closed life support system, and without borrowing from future generations to make that happen, which is, we're basically spending our great grandchildren's resources right now like it was free. So so that's one way to look at it.
Because I know a lot of people my age, we're getting married later. We're talking about having kids at this point in our lives, and some of us, we're worried about having kids because we worry about the future of tomorrow. And that's not even I don't even think that we're really being fear-mongered by that. I think that's a pretty legit concern. I don't know if I want my kid or my grandkids to come into this world and watch it explode around them, or watch the seas come in and collapse on the land that they were so trusting of, and things like that. That sounds cataclysmic, and to bring them into something like that, I don't know if I can stomach that personally. Maybe that's just me being too kind and having not enough hope. But I also do believe what you had said earlier, that we control the, not just me, not just you, but so many, and the next, right? We had a comment in the chat come in that asked, us as the common man or woman or human or living specimen, earthling, as you like to, I think, put it right, as we're all earthlings essentially, if I'm not mistaken. And how can the common person, if you were to give us a call to action, help fix what the future of tomorrow might look like?
Well, let's frame it for a second. Let me show you something real quick.
Mhm.
So this image is the image that our civilization is currently based on, right?
Right.
This two-dimensional landscape of nation states fighting and competing over resources and ideology. It's a landscape where not only nations compete, but also NGOs, special interest groups, political parties. But what we need to keep in mind is that this is the real world. This is what the world really looks like. This photograph is known as Earthrise. Was taken by the Apollo 8 astronauts back in 1968. But what we need to understand is that this image is something that we created,
Right.
but it was not created based on the reality of the world, and it may have served us in the past. It may have been appropriate before we realized that humans could destroy the very life support systems of our planet. It may have been appropriate when we could before we realized that how truly interdependent we all are. It may have been appropriate when nation states could operate in relative isolation, but this is the guidepost of the old human epoch.
Right.
This is what got us here. What I'm saying is that this image is no longer the appropriate guidepost for our actions. This image is the appropriate guidepost for our actions. We face some very real challenges and problems, and the only way that we're going to be able to overcome those challenges and problems, if we attack those problems, if we try and solve those problems in the context of the real world, right? And so we need to shift away from a mindset where I'll pick on businesses a little bit right now, because
Yeah.
I mean, although governments are a big problem too, but businesses have the incredible power to either destroy our planet by
Right.
clinging to the old mindset, clinging to that two-dimensional landscape, clinging to the old mindset of conquest, competition, resource exploitation, profit maximization at all costs, or business can save it by embracing this image of Earthrise and our true interdependence, and building a future on the foundation of awe and wonder, and businesses existing first and foremost to serve the needs of society, and businesses that are not operating in a solely self-serving, independent, and as independent entities, but as interdependent nodes in a fabric of prosperity,
Right.
where everyone has the opportunity to live a good life and contribute to society how they so choose. And so I think embracing the image of Earthrise, which has three key tenets: interdependence, long-term thinking, and profound collaboration, all wrapped in the blanket of empathy and compassion. That's what will get us this population curve, leveling out and reaching equilibrium and living within our Earth's planetary boundaries, and having a world where everybody's can strive to meet their own potential. And I think there's obviously a lot of nuances to all that, but I think in a nutshell, that's what's going on. And I think, to answer your question more directly about what each individual person can do, I think the first thing they need to do is to realize how incredibly powerful they are
Right.
to affect real change. And I think a lot of people want to make a difference, but they're hesitant to make a difference because they figure, what can I possibly do? What can one person possibly do with all the problems that are facing the planet, right? And the way I like to explain what I mean by, you're more powerful than you could ever imagine, is to use the example of an asteroid, right?
Mhm.
And so if a giant asteroid was heading towards the Earth, and it was so big that if it hit the Earth, it would wipe out all life on the planet. If we knew about this asteroid soon enough, we wouldn't have to send a team of astronauts to go blow it to smithereens. We
Right.
could send a small spacecraft, and with the force, the equivalent of the weight of a feather, we could give that asteroid just a slight nudge, and that slight nudge over the course of its entire travel to Earth could result in thousands of miles of mist distance, saving every living thing on the planet.
Right.
And so everything that we do, every word, action, thought, deed, every moment of every day ripples out in all directions and affects not only the trajectory of your own life, but the trajectory of our society, of our civilization, and where the world will be 100,000 years from now, and where it would have been had you not lived, are going to be vastly different. So, we're taught that, we need to leave a legacy, right? Leave a mark on the world. But leaving a legacy as we are normally taught to think about it is irrelevant, because every great statesman, every sports hero, every social media influencer, every person of note is eventually going to be reduced at best to a historical footnote. And even all the physical things we create, every great cathedral, every pyramid will eventually be reduced to dust.
Right.
And so all of that stuff is going to disappear. But what's not going to disappear is the nudges you made in the trajectory of our society. Not only will they not disappear, they will increase exponentially as time goes on. And so that's what we should focus on. And one thing to think about is legacy from that point of view. What I like to call legacy from the orbital perspective doesn't require you get credit for it. And so a lot of people are hesitant to, because they spend more effort trying to figure out how they're going to get credit for whatever it is they're going to do versus what they're going to do, right? And that's why you see NGOs that are trying to do the same exact thing, provide clean water to people in the world, fighting each other because they each want to get the credit for it. And the result is that it becomes counterproductive. And less people
legacy.
Right, unless people have clean water because of it.
Right. Living for yourself is definitely a very, old way of thinking. I think that since we've moved away from, like you said, our evolution of being ruled, right? That was one of the biggest evolutions I think we had as mankind or humanity at this point, is we stopped being oppressed by heavy rulers, right? Or like that's where we've definitely moved to. And now probably the next step from there is hopefully trying to find some kind of, civil independence and, be able to govern oneself and help bring the world into a trajectory that helps save our planet.
I think we're still being ruled by heavy rulers. They come in different forms.
Right. Like you were saying, corporations we have. I mean, obviously our government. A lot of people still, I will say, in other countries, they don't mind being ruled. So really, it's fascinating to me to see, though, like the more that you've talked about human evolution, now my brain starts to wrap around what you've said in the book, what I've read there, and then other things that I've read have teachers, teach me about. And like one of my teachers in high school, was a science teacher of mine. He would always talk about, don't worry about the legacy you leave behind, really focus on the carbon footprint. And like he really tried to drill that into our head and how big of a impact that we have on what we leave behind in that effect. And that just what you were saying, that's where my brain was just constantly being reminded of carbon footprint, how this actually impacts everyone and not just yourself as an individual.
Definitely.
One thing I did want to ask you about, actually, kind of detouring a little bit from space here, that I find really fascinating, is you did get to spend 18 days at the bottom of the ocean, if I'm not mistaken.
Right, yeah.
What was the similarities and the differences to being at the bottom of the ocean versus being in space?
Well, it was a science mission on Aquarius, the world's only undersea laboratory, and the similarities are we were both in space and on the bottom of the ocean. We're living in a hostile environment. What I mean by hostile is we're dependent on our life support systems for our lives, and if they break down, or if there's a mistake or something, it could cost us our lives. They're similar, and they both are. We were both. In both situations, the crew, were immersed in awe and wonder, the awe and wonder of the undersea world, living on a beautiful coral reef with all the marine life, and the beauty of it was breathtaking. And space obviously is breathtaking as well. So there's that aspect of it. You're separated out from the rest of the world in both cases, so that's similar. The big difference between the two is on the bottom of the ocean. We got to meet our neighbors and got to know our neighbors.
Right.
We didn't have any neighbors that we knew of on the space station. So
Awesome. Did you have to do any so I know in space your bone density breaks down over time as there's no gravity acting on them, correct? And you're not using them as often. So I know that you had to do special exercises in space for that. I've seen that in other interviews with fellow astronauts and such. When you were down under the ocean, did you have to do something similar like that, or
no? Because we're still in a 1G gravity field. Well, it's not so much the pressure; it's the gravity. The gravity is pushing us down, and the exercise was just part of the mission. There was most of the things that we were doing required a lot of physical activity. We were simulating that we were on a moon base.
Okay.
That we were on the bottom of the ocean, but we were simulating that the seafloor was the surface of the moon.
Okay.
And so we were building things out there, with helmets on and simulating spacesuits, and it was a very physical thing. So, but you're right, in space, because we're in a microgravity environment, we start to lose bone density, we start to lose muscle mass, but we exercise 2 hours a day, every day, to maintain bone density and muscle mass.
You guys have to use like special equipment when you're
That's right.
doing physical activity in space, right? Like such as like weights to like weigh you down to treadmills or something like that, and you can't actually have like normal workout equipment because of how space works.
Right. So we do an hour of aerobics and an hour of weightlifting a day, and the aerobics is either on a stationary bike, which we don't really have any special equipment. We just clip our toes in and hold on to the handlebars, and we're not going anywhere.
Right.
But the treadmill, you have to wear a harness, and then you bungee yourself down to the treadmill, and then the tension of the bungee, how much tension you put in the bungee is how much weight you're simulating.
Okay.
And then the weightlifting is all resistance. And so pretty much
Right.
we have this wonderful machine called ARID, and pretty much any exercise you could do on Earth, deadlifting, bench pressing, squats, any of that stuff, we can do with this equipment. And it's resistance training, but it's very, very good resistance training, and it's very effective at maintaining muscle mass and bone density.
And then is your stationary bike, does that have to be like on springs or anything like the treadmill has to? Due to like, I know like obviously you can't break the International Space Station, and when you're actually working out, things are moving and such.
Yeah, the treadmill and the weightlifting equipment is isolated from the rest of the space station. The bike is not, and if we needed to do some experiments where we needed to keep the microgravity environment intact, then we wouldn't use the bike, or we probably wouldn't use any of the equipment if if it was really sensitive. But we deconflict when we do exercise from when we have experiments running that are critical to have no accelerations placed on them.
Okay. Yeah, that's awesome. That's fascinating to me. I mean, just the fact that like how everything changes up there versus obviously what we're so accustomed to down on Earth. Another thing that was really interesting to me, this is my kind of out there a little bit of my research question for you. So you're from New York, correct?
Correct.
What do you think is the best topping on pizza?
Cheese.
Cheese, just a plain cheese pizza.
If you got a good pizza, you don't need any toppings.
That's true. And what would you say is the best place to get pizza in New York for anyone that hasn't been there before?
That's a tough one. That's a tough one. I've had some good pizza in Yonkers, and I've had some good pizza in Brooklyn, and I've had some good pizza in Manhattan.
Brooklyn was probably the best pizza I've had to date so far for myself.
Yeah, there's a place called Pino's in Brooklyn. There's a place there.
I got taken to Pino's in Brooklyn.
Ray's or Johnny's in Manhattan.
Okay.
And I'll get in too much trouble if I say anything about Yonkers. So
got it.
They're all. I'll say what I will say. They're all good in Yonkers. You can't go wrong in Yonkers.
I'll keep that in mind. I got a wedding to go to out there in September, so I'm a foodie. I love food. It's like one of the best things about life, I think, is being able to enjoy food. So really enjoy that. What else did I have for you here in my notes? On the Orbital Perspective, that's also the name of your podcast, I believe, correct?
It's the name of my podcast. That's the name of my first book.
First book as well. Yeah. So in I believe that I want to say that in the video that we did show, it did kind of highlight a little bit of what that means. But did you want to kind of dive into more of what you feel the Orbital Perspective is? Yeah.
So the Orbital Perspective is one side of a coin, where the other side of the coin is something called the overview effect. And so the overview effect is a term coined by a Harvard professor, author, Frank White, back in the 80s, I think. And he interviewed a bunch of astronauts and came up with this term to describe the light bulb that comes on in astronauts where they see the planet for the first time in space, and they realize the true nature of our not only interconnectedness but interdependencies, and how we're all in this together, and they see the beauty of the Earth in contrast to the deep blackness of space, and it looks like a beautiful fragile oasis, and so that's the overview effect, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if the overview effect is that light bulb coming on, the orbital perspective is what you do with it. The orbital perspective is the call to action that comes from the overview effect. And there's a book called The Overview Effect, written by Frank White. And in the last edition, I wrote the foreword to the book, basically talking about the relationship between the overview effect and the orbital perspective. Because what's the sense of getting this, epiphany of our unity, and then not doing it, and then not doing about it, and coming back and just living life like, in ignoring that truth. And so that's why I wrote the book, The Orbital Perspective. And really that book is all about setting aside our differences and working together, right? It's about cooperation. It's about collaboration. It's about, and it talks, there's a chapter in there called Arrested Development, because I've got a lot of experience doing sustainable development and humanitarian projects around the world. And there's a whole chapter on how messed up that field of a lot of well-meaning people go into that, and in some cases create more harm than good because of all of these problems that are associated with it. So it's a totally different book than Floating in Darkness. Floating in Darkness takes a more inner journey, I think, than Orbital Perspective, but they both serve their own unique purposes.
Absolutely. And I felt like I read your book front to cover yesterday because I really wanted to have it in my mind.
Floating in Darkness?
Yeah. I took the
that's
whole day
like
to
400.
do that.
That's like 400 something pages.
Yeah, we went in on it. I like to read, so I did a little bit of skipping around in certain parts, but for the most part, I read it front to cover, and then anything that I wasn't understanding, I would try to go to your videos to cross reference and try to get some ideals for, and then things that you were obviously highlighting in your videos. It's all right, these are ideas that I need to go and find, make sure I understand what he's trying to interpret, or if I don't, love to ask him about it, pick his brain, because knowledge is king in my mind. Without knowledge and without giving that knowledge, what's the point of having it? What are you going to your grave with knowledge for?
Exactly.
So no, we very much appreciate you always sharing your mind and being so open about your experiences. It's been absolutely phenomenal to get to hear about just what space is like. As a young kid, you asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up. It was astronaut. I drew that picture 1 through 5th grade. That was where I was at. And then I had really bad asthma, and I realized that I might not be able to do space because of my asthma. But I think I just got into my head there and gave up on a dream at too young of an age, and so now I chase my own dreams.
That might be changing. That all might be changing. It might be opening up.
True.
I think it is. Yeah.
I saw that you had actually gotten interviewed on TMZ, not only about your book, but also they were wondering about your perspective on what space tourism might be like. What are your thoughts on that, and starting to explore that field?
Yeah, it's funny. I did about 40 interviews in the last 2 weeks, including twice on the Today Show and TMZ and NBC Nightly News and a bunch of other things.
Thanks for joining our small community.
No. It's a lot of. The point being that there's a lot of buzz around that. And it's funny, the TMZ interview. That's not the first TMZ interview I've done, but it's the first TMZ interview I've done where I wasn't ambushed on the street.
Oh, right, yeah, because that's what I was like when I first saw that pop up. My girlfriend's like, "Did you know that he got interviewed by TMZ?" And I was like, "No, had no idea." And she's like, "Think he got ambushed?" I'm like, "Do they do any other kind of interview?" And then I watched it pop up, and I'm like, "Oh, it was a normal interview. They didn't ambush him."
Yeah, no, it was TMZ. It was TMZ Live. So I guess they don't ambush people on TMZ Live.
I was thinking you might be walking down the street with Richard Branson or something, and they were just running up to you guys, and he was like, "Ron, talk to them for me."
Well, the first time I was walking out of a building in New York, I had just done an interview, and there were these guys standing outside, and they had pictures of me in their hands. And they said, "Hey, Ron, can we have your autograph?" I'm like, "Okay." So I walk over there, and I'm signing them, and I look up, and all of a sudden there's all these cameras in my face, and with all these microphones sticking in my face, and they're asking me all these really stupid questions. So
paparazzi for you.
Yeah. But this one was planned, and it was a good interview. But yeah, I think that we are potentially on the eve of a new era of space travel, where hopefully space travel becomes as commonplace as air travel is right now. So, that's a real possibility.
Yeah, absolutely. For like me, as obviously you can see on my posters, huge anime fan. One of the big things that anime really tries to, or like Japan at least, has tried to push into anime in probably the last, like I'd say, 5 to 6ish years, is that we're exploring space in the form of like terraforming. Do you believe that our solar system is capable of handling something like that? I know like some have talked about Mars and such, but just from some of the research that I've seen, they don't really have a sustainable magnetic field for us to actually have any kind of atmospheric approach there.
Yeah, if you're asking me if it's possible, certainly it's possible. I think everything is possible.
Right.
However, if we can't even control our own planet by a couple of degrees, I think we're a long way from being able to completely terraform another planet.
Right.
So, all the more reason to get a handle on our own planet, because if we can control the temperature of our planet, we can control, and we can control the other systems of our planet, the other life support systems of our planet, then we have a fighting chance of being able to terraform another planet. But we got to start here. We got to figure out this planet first,
Right.
before we start trying to monkey with other planets.
The first issue that we have, take care of us, then let's start trying to venture out. Got it. No, that was something that I've always found kind of fascinating. I know there's been talk about it. Never really get to pick, an astronaut's brain on that and see what they think.
Well, I mean, there are people that think that we're gonna populate the solar system, basically as abandoning the ship, right? We're gonna destroy this planet and go live elsewhere. I think that's a really, really dangerous, really, really short-sighted, really stupid point of view. It's not based in any real science or fact. We should be pollinating the rest of the solar system and beyond, but we should do it as ambassadors of a thriving planet. And so, and again, like I said, if we can't control a couple of degrees on this planet, we're not going to be able to do that elsewhere.
Right. No, 100% agree with that. I mean, it's, I know that our neighbors in the ocean already have issues with us, so I can only imagine, us trying to convey with any other life out there, hey guys, we're struggling on our planet. Can we come live on yours? Well, I wouldn't want you living on ours. You already ruined your home. As family that had real estate, we dealt with being landlords for people and people that ruined our houses. We didn't want them living in that, so I wouldn't want them living in my next house either. No, I completely can see where you're coming from with that perspective, and I agree with it. Yeah, 100%. I think we have a couple of questions here that came in from chat. What was the most interesting or engaging experiment that you witnessed or were involved in with the ISS?
That's a tough question because there's so many experiments. There are experiments that were looking at creating new vaccines, new medicines, new materials, new ways to create energy. Lots and lots of Earth observation type of experiments looking at ways to increase agricultural yields, for instance. A lot of combustion research that looked at improving the efficiency of a combustion reaction, which, if you were to increase the efficiency by even a couple of percent, that would, lead to, millions of tons less CO2 in the atmosphere.
Right.
Lots and lots of experiments on the human body, particularly the cardiovascular system, looking for ways to combat things like osteoporosis, a lot of study of the eye, because the eye changes shape in space. The list really goes on and on. I don't think I could put my finger on it, but I do know there was one experiment that I was doing. It was a basic science experiment doing fluid mechanics, and my job was to just film a bubble moving a couple of millimeters, and apparently the bubble moved the couple of millimeters that it was supposed to, and that was, an earth-shattering scientific discovery. Like there was like this major theory was proven true because of that. But so on the ground there was champagne bottles popping, but on orbit it was just a bubble that just jiggled a little bit. so
that's really interesting, actually. Just one bubble?
I think it was just one little bubble.
Wow.
That moved almost imperceptibly, but it was enough to open some champagne and cigars or whatever they're doing down there.
That's awesome. No, that's awesome. Another thing that I actually wanted to ask you about that I kind of got sidetracked on is, can you describe a spacewalk, like what that job entails, what you're doing on a spacewalk?
Yeah, normally a spacewalk is either you're doing some type of construction activity,
Mm-hmm.
or you're doing some type of maintenance activity. And maintenance activity also includes like retrieving external experiments and things like that. And so occasionally things break on the space station, and occasionally those things are outside, and we got to put on a spacesuit and go out and fix it. My first mission was a construction mission. Our crew brought up and installed the Japanese laboratory onto the space station. And so I did 3 spacewalks on that mission, which I'd say 80% of the tasks that we did on those 3 spacewalks were in support of the installation of the Japanese laboratory.
Okay.
And getting its robotic, it had its own robotic arm. So getting the robotic arm ready to go, making sure all the electrical connections are connected, just all kinds of stuff like that. And then the rest of the stuff was all maintenance or prepping or changing the configuration of the space station. So we had to do some things, even though it was many years before a SpaceX Dragon or another spacecraft would come to the space station.
Mm-hmm.
We had to, make sure that the space station was configured in a way that would support those things. And so that's kind of what we do on a spacewalk.
Nice. Well, that's fascinating to me. So when you're out there, like, how, like, are you just like attached to essentially like a cord? Like, what's keeping you?
Yeah. It's not unlike mountain climbing. So the first thing we do even before we get out of the hatch is we take a hook and we put the hook on the outside of the space station on a handrail, right? There's handrails all over the space station, right? And then that as we come out of the hatch and we go from point A to point B, which we do with our hands, even though it's called spacewalking, that hook is attached to a wire that's attached to a reel that's reeling out as we're going away, and it's like 85 feet long.
Okay.
And so when we get to the end of the 85 feet, we put another hook down and take that hook off, and we go another 85 feet. And so theoretically, if we were to drift off the space station, that wire would allow us to come back to the space station, right? If we didn't go off at a high enough speed to break the wire. If we did come off at a high enough speed to break the wire, we have jetpacks, so we could pop out a joystick and fly ourselves back if we didn't be pushed off at too high of a velocity, because all it is little tanks of nitrogen that are shooting gas, and it's so. I mean, the chances of floating away to the point where you can't get back is not very high, but it's not zero either. So
Right. So you got to be prepared for that. Do you guys get trained with those jetpacks in like an anti-gravity field?
And VR, we do that. That training's in VR.
Okay,
So,
that's cool.
yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Neat. Yeah, you guys were, man. So when did you do your last mission? What year was
The last
that?
mission was in 2011.
So 2011. Would you go back again if you got offered?
Yeah, in a heartbeat. If there was something meaningful that I was needed to do, because any of these things that I do, because I've done a lot of dangerous stuff in my life, but they all were accompanied with a risk-benefit trade-off analysis.
Right. Right.
Is the risk worth it? I've jumped out of an airplane 50 times. Not once did I ever do it just for the sheer fun of it. Although it is fun, it's
Could
fun,
do
but I. Yeah. So, one of those, I didn't have a choice. I ejected from an F-16. That was my first parachute experience.
Was that
was
when you were a test pilot, or was that when you were a fighter pilot?
I was a fighter pilot. Then,
Okay.
Yeah. And so, in any of those dangerous situations, I just take, is it worth the risk? And if the risk is worth taking, then I take it.
Yeah. No, that's. I remember you had said something about using the risk versus reward like analysis for when you got asked on TMZ if Ashton Kutcher should go to space, and if Mila Kunis should ask him. And I was like, oh, what a way to tie in, that question. But no, I find that really fascinating on a good way to approach things. I think about most things. Like I use simulation theory in my mind. Like I think about like, all right, this is the outcome, this is the outcome, this is the outcome. And if I see like more positive, more beneficial outcome for things, then obviously putting myself in the hole or doing something stupid, then yeah, I usually go for it full throttle. So I like that outlook on things, and that's awesome that you would go back. Was I know this is a question that probably gets asked all the time, but was there like a favorite food that you had when you were in space, or like did you ever have to share rations with any of the other countries up on the ISS?
Well, we all share rations.
Okay.
There's one food stock up there. There's
Okay.
one crew. There's not the Russian crew and the Japanese crew and the American crew.
It's
Anytime.
just you're all in
There's one
space
crew.
together, correct? Okay.
There's just the crew, yeah. And so yeah, we eat. I remember there was on STS 134, the last flight of Endeavour. Roberto Vittori was an Italian astronaut who brought up a bunch of Italian delicacies from his hometown. That was pretty cool. Yeah, I mean, it's food on the space station is usually like camping food. It's either dehydrated or irradiated. Although the Russians seem to have more of food like food.
Because they have like fish in a can, like tuna, you know.
They do,
like
yeah.
that.
They have like real food in a can.
Probably
so
better
it's
texturally
really-
when you're up there for close to 200 days.
Yeah.
What was your longest mission, time wise? Because I have in my notes here that you were in space for was it a total of 178?
Yeah, so I was my first mission was 2 weeks, and my second mission was about 5.5 months. So
Okay.
total, almost 6 months. a
How
couple
was
days shy.
acclimating back after the 2 weeks versus the 5 months?
It was tougher acclimating. Well, the immediate adaptation was actually much easier after the 6 months than it was after the 2-week mission, and the reason is because I didn't have any context my first time to compare it to. So in other words, just as an example, when Space Shuttle Discovery came, rolled out to a full stop at the Kennedy Space Center, and we each, crawled through the hatch to get out, somebody handed me we're in our spacesuits, right? So somebody handed me a T-shirt to change into, and my hand dropped. It felt like it was made out of lead.
Right.
I mean, it felt really, really heavy. And then fast forward a few years later, I get pulled out of the capsule in Kazakhstan, and I'm sitting there, and I had been in space for 6 months, not 2 weeks.
Right.
And somebody handed me a bottle of water, and it felt like a bottle of water.
Huh.
And so, and I realized, I said, wow, this feels just like a bottle of water. Why doesn't it feel heavy? And I realized because I had been through that transition from 0G to 1G before, my brain just went Control to delete, whatever, reset to Earth. And I just my psychology reset to the Earth frame, not
That
the space
is
frame.
super interesting because I have heard from most other interviews of other astronauts that they, from longer time, had a harder time acclimating. So that's
No, that is true. You definitely have a harder time acclimating for the long term. Yes.
true. But I was saying right when they got back, I want to say one of the first that pops in my head is the Joe Rogan interview with I want to say it was Terry
Virts.
Yeah, Terry Virts, and he had said his helmet on his longer when he came back from the longer run felt like it was 500 pounds to him, and he was telling everybody whoa, be careful lifting that. So I just found that pretty interesting that your brain was able to kind of correlate, hey, I've done this before, I get it, so that's really, really cool. I mean, that's just perseverance right there. So that's neat. Definitely different, everybody's different, and that's the thing that is awesome to me is that you said, again, going back to that one thing, we are all individuals, but we all play a note to one single song, and exactly. I can totally see that.
Yep. Awesome.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I think we've gotten to about an hour here. I don't have any other questions right now that are jumping out at me. Was there anything else that you wanted to touch on or wanted to promote today? I guess we didn't talk about the book signing yet that you have coming up on Thursday.
Oh yeah,
correct?
that's true. Yeah.
So that's Boulder Bookstore.
The Boulder Bookstore, downtown Boulder, Colorado. If you're in the area, stop by. I'd love to meet everybody. And
will you be able to get books there that day?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I was. That was the one thing I had to use the Kindle because I could not find a paperback in my area or a hardback even.
Well, floatingindarkness.com, you could order them there or on Amazon. I'm fulfilling on Amazon right now too. So if you order on Amazon, but if you order on floatingindarkness.com, they're signed books.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah,
Perfect.
We haven't figured out how to do that on Amazon yet. So
love that. And then, so guys, I have the YouTube, and I'm going to post floatingindarkness.com in the chat for you guys to go and check out. Make sure you pick up the book. It's an awesome read. I enjoyed it yesterday so much so that I was able to read close to 400 pages in a day. So it was awesome getting to know you through that. And then, obviously, guys, I've gotten to talk to Ron prior to doing this interview, but fantastic human here. Definitely give him a follow on all of his socials. Check out his YouTube channel. Share that video, guys. Remember, we're really trying to get that message out there about how we are all one on this planet together, and we all need to work as one together to try to save it.
Yeah. Thanks, Tanner. Appreciate that.
Absolutely, Ron.